Hi, I'm Shailyn and I sew. It is Filipino Friday, so I decided that today I wanted to go over some of the Filipino textiles that I have acquired over the last 2 or 3 years, as well as some of the reference books that I currently own that go over Filipino fashions, the textiles, and the weaving. So let's begin. So these are where I keep all of my Filipino fabrics. This is an IKEA storage entertainment center, and I just decided to use it so I can visually see all the fabrics that I own. So in this shelf, you'll see that I have quite a few pieces of Filipino textiles, and I will go over them in the order that I ordered them. So this is the first piece I ever bought. As you can tell, I haven't actually done anything with it. I got this from a website called ClothRoads.com. Now, the owner of the website mentions that what she does is she travels around the world to different communities, and she goes and buys these textiles from the local community. So it has some symbolism on it. Diamonds and triangles. I also have no idea if the colors have any meaning to it. But again, I'm not, an expert on Filipino textiles. These are just the material that I've bought throughout the years. These are the next two pieces that I got online. I got this off of Etsy, and at the time, there were no sellers selling hand-woven Filipino textiles. So I got really lucky. The seller had, I think it was like a half yard left of these two materials. And obviously, since I got the material from a fabric seller, she just didn't have much information on it. She didn't know where it was woven. She just knows that it was supplied from the Philippines. So at this point of my research with Filipino textiles, I realized that it would be very hard for me to source the materials online myself. A lot of sellers didn't want to ship to the US, or if they did ship to the US, it costs about $50 per kilo, and that was really difficult for me financially just to, get some fabric from the Philippines. So I ended up asking my cousin if she could find me some hand-woven textiles. Lucky for me, she was just traveling to Iloilo. So these are the 3 textiles that she got me from Iloilo. And she got them from a place called Arevalo Handwoven. This place, she said, is very well known in the Philippines. She went to the University of the Philippines, and Arevalo Handwoven is where they weave the supplies that are worn by the graduates of the University of the Philippines. Now, this textile in particular is called hablon. It basically means hand-woven fabric, and it comes from the word habol, which comes from the Hiligaynon community, which is the language of the people of central Filipino islands. So for a while I was very confused about what hablon meant. I thought it was the type of weave, but it is actually the local term for the material because of the region and the language. This fabric you have already seen if you follow me on Instagram. I actually used this fabric already, and I actually just cut it out and made it a tapestry in my kitchen. As well as this one I used for a specific skirt. Now these fabrics I got from ANTHILL Fabric Gallery. Now at the time, again, they weren't online, they weren't selling it online, but I was able to email them and have them ship it to me. So I got really lucky there. ANTHILL Fabric Gallery now offers the fabrics online, so you can order them by the meter. Now in the Ilocos region, they call it inabel, and that comes from, I think abel means to weave. Again, these are Ilocos region weaves. So this material in particular, you can see that the designs kind of float on top, similar to brocades. And that is called, in Ilocos region, that's called pinilian. So that is the type of weave that is being done to create these designs. So this is one of my favorites. This is called binakol, and the weave, as you can see, kind of gives an optical illusion. This is where I kind of strayed away from the Ilocos region, and I wanted to get some really cool looking fabrics from Yakan tribe. So these are hand woven in Yakan. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the Yakan tribe. I've been doing a lot more research trying to figure out what these designs mean. I believe this is a guava flower, which you can actually find in the other weave I showed you right here. I feel a little bit weird showing them off because I'm still researching the meaning behind it before I even try to use the fabric. I don't want to use the fabric inappropriately based off colors or symbols, so I have left these aside, and they're probably going to be the last ones that I use if I ever use it. Now I do have one more weave that I did order off Etsy. This is from the Maranao tribe. It is called langkit, which is the type of weaving that they do there. It's a very narrow weave. I believe this is 3 inches wide, and it is used to embellish what they wear. This type of langkit is called sukip, which means inserting the pattern, and I believe that that is similar to this Benilian type weave, where they weave the pattern on top. And now over here is where you can find some of my reference books. So these are all of my books in reference to the Philippines, some fashion and some not. And I will go over the ones that are Filipino fabric or fashion related with you all. So I've split the books in half of books specifically about Filipino weaves and then books specifically about Filipino fashions. And we're going to go from there. So this first book is called Journey of 1,000 Shuttles, the Filipino Weave. Now if you're interested in weaving in general and particularly about the Philippines and how they weave, what materials they use when they weave the textiles, then this is a really good book for you to get started, to learn about the dyes that they use and the different materials that they use as well. Now it doesn't go into that much detail in terms of the types of weaves that are found in the Philippines, so you're going to need an additional book from there. Now this one is called Woven Universes, Math, Method, Meaning, and Magic in Philippine Indigenous Textiles. It's a very short book, but it does go over a lot of detail about different specific weaves that you can find all over the Philippines. So after I got those books, I also got this one. It's called From the Rainbow's Varied Hue, Textiles of the Southern Philippines. Unless you are an avid researcher or you're very, very, very interested in woven textiles, I don't really recommend this for just anyone. It's really good for doing your research on specific weaves and specific symbols, but it doesn't really... I wouldn't say that this is a book that you must have if you're only dabbling in the woven textiles. Now from these 3 books, I found that there was actually not a lot of information on Northern Filipino weaving, so I ended up buying this book called Inabel, Philippine Textile from the Ilocos region. And again, my family is from the Ilocos region, so I wanted something that focused purely on weaves from the north, and I really truly love this book if you are interested in Inabel in particular and wanted to know more about that region of Philippine textile. Now this first book, again, The Journey of 1,000 Shuttles, I would recommend as an overview of the textiles that you can find in the Philippines. And then these 2 I would recommend if you wanted to go more in depth. Inabel for the Ilocos region, and then From the Rainbow's Varied Hue for all of the south part of the Philippines. Now the fun part. So these are my fashion books for the Philippines. And I call them fashion books because they go over the design of the terno and the Filipino fashion. So obviously this first one is called Terno 2020. This one is a good coffee table book. It's really pretty to look through. It's really nice to get inspired by it and just see all the different designs from all the different designers in the Philippines. And in the back it actually does tell you how to make a terno sleeve. Now this one, it shows you two types of terno sleeves. I bought this book specifically for the terno sleeve pattern. However, this pattern is also found in the two other books that I have. So, if you remember Fashionable Filipinas, this is in my terno sleeve video, and Patterns for the Filipino Dress. These two are where I got the terno sleeve pattern from, and it's the same pattern in TernoCon 2020. So if you're looking for that sleeve pattern, it's in all three of these books. Fashionable Filipinas is the book that I highly recommend anyone who is interested in Filipino fashion. It goes from the 1800s all the way to, I think, the 1960s. And it's very detailed. It has a lot of historical pictures and a lot of historical dresses from the past, and details the different things that changed throughout the years of the Filipino dress. So I highly recommend this if you're into Filipino fashion in general, but particularly into the history of Filipino fashion. Patterns for the Filipino Dress is one of my favorite books, only because I am a seamstress, so I really love looking through how they created these dresses. So it kind of goes, it's like a little mini overview of Fashionable Filipinas. It goes over decade by decade some of the specific things you would see in a dress during that decade. And then it goes over the pattern. Now, if you are very new to sewing, this is not the book for you. It gives you an overview of what the pattern pieces look like, and in the back here it does tell you how to start drafting your patterns based off of your measurements. The patterns in the book kind of outline how they did it, but it doesn't give you an actual pattern to cut out, and you still have to have an understanding of flat pattern drafting as well as fitting for yourself. Last but not least, Baro, Philippine Fabric and Fashion. Now, if you're looking for something that goes over Philippine fabrics and the fashion of the Philippines, then this one is the one I would recommend, especially if you're on a budget. It's not as in-depth as the other books that I showed you, but it's a great overview on the fabrics and the designs that you would see. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Again, I do not own a lot of textiles from the Philippines, and that is mostly because I wanted to steer towards where my family is from, as well as I want to be a little bit more educated in the textiles before I go ahead and buy them. I want to make sure that I understand what all the symbolism means, what the colors mean in the textiles, if there's any meaning for it, and so on and so forth. And that leads into why I have so many reference books. Now, I went over these reference books in case you all were interested in maybe buying your own reference books, but I also wanted to show you that not one specific book will tell you everything that you need to know about Filipino textiles. There are so many different textiles and weaving communities in the Philippines that it's really hard to find one book that goes over everything. So I suggest that you find out what region that you are interested in and go from there. Again, my family is from the northern region in Cagayan and Ilocos region, so I started with the Ilocos region and learned from there, and I will probably start figuring out what other fabrics and textiles are available from where my family is from. But that's a personal preference, and hopefully you all learned a little bit something from this video, or at least enjoyed seeing all the different textiles that I own from the Philippines. Happy New Year, and hope to see you next time.